It's Not Your Fault is a podcast for parents, caregivers, and young people navigating the world and its challenges. Here's your host, Brandon Jones.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. I am your host, Brandon Jones, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Disorder. This is a very interesting episode because we're going to have an actual guest. We don't have too many guests on the podcast, but we're starting to do little, different things, and we're starting to open up different ways of making sure that everyone has the information that they need, especially parents, caregivers, and youth workers, those folks who work with young people. So today's guest, we have Martha Johnson, and Martha Johnson is from the organization Proof Alliance, correct?
I volunteer for Proof, yes.
So you're volunteer for Proof Alliance. Yep. Perfect. So Martha, can you tell us a little bit about who you are? Tell us a little bit about Proof Alliance and why you volunteer there.
Sure. So Proof Alliance, well, first of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Martha Johnson, and I am a retired teacher. I worked in St. Paul Public Schools for 28 years as a teacher, and I care deeply about FASD. I met a young man who was a teenager at our church who was struggling in 1985, a very long time ago. And he has been kind of a part of our family. In fact, he and I are going out for dinner on Sunday night. So he continues to be a part of our family in terms of being close friends with his parents and with him as well. He's now in his 50s and lives in a group home and is moving towards being in an independent living situation, but with supports. In addition to that, for Proof Alliance, I've been a volunteer with them for many, many years. And the main reason why I've been a volunteer with Proof Alliance is because we adopted a little boy who was impacted and actually has FASD, Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, and his specific diagnosis is called ARND. So lots of alphabet soup here, but it's alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder. And so that's his exact diagnosis. And as a teacher, I have noticed a number of students that either had a diagnosis and parents told me outright that he or she had this diagnosis, or I've suspected it. And because I see it on both sides as a parent and as a teacher, I'm in a unique position to give teachers and parents and caregivers some advice about the educational system for these special students, because that's what they are. And every child with FASD is unique. And I think with the right supports can do well and thrive in school settings and in social settings. But there are some unique things that our kids need some extra support to be successful.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit more about FASD? What is it? A lot of people may not even realize that there are folks who have the disorder. Can you share a little bit more about what it is?
Sure, absolutely. So FASD is a brain-based condition, and it's caused by prenatal alcohol exposure. So when the baby is still in the womb, if the mom is drinking alcohol, it can affect the baby's growth, particularly in their brain development. There are a few myths related to FASD that some people think that only poor people have FASD, and that's absolutely false. It cuts across all different groups of people, of different skin colors, ethnic backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds as well. Also, some people say, oh, well, my child can't have FASD because they don't have the facial features. There are 3 primary facial features of FASD, which is a thin upper lip, a flat philtrum right here, right below the nose, that's completely flat, and then smaller eye openings that's measured actually by a medical doctor. It's not just about look. There can be a few other things like smaller stature and a smaller head circumference, but some of those things are also genetic, and so it's not always an accurate thing. But one of the misconceptions is that people think that, oh, my son or daughter doesn't have FASD because they don't have any of the features, and that's absolutely false. That actually only 10% of people who have FASD have those facial features. So indeed, it really is an invisible disability because it's not something that you can look at a person and know that they have it. Some other common misconceptions are that it's not very common, and that's just not true. It's very common. Right now, the numbers since 2018 in a study were published saying it's approximately 1 person in every 20 is born with FASD. So the numbers are really high. It's higher than Down syndrome, it's higher than autism, and it is the leading cause of intellectual disabilities in the United States today.
Wow.
And we need to be talking about it a lot more.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I didn't realize it was that frequent, that common. Even in my own professional experience, I've had, when I was a case manager years ago, I had a few clients who had FASD, and unfortunately, those clients also had behavioral challenges as well. They ended up being in like level 4 schools and things of that nature. And and what we were able to discover is it definitely had something to do with the brain development pieces. That's sometimes there are behavioral things that end up happening for young people who have it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Can you share a little bit on like how a FASD young person, someone who has this, how does that impact them in school? What does that look like? What is it typically like for them when they're in school settings?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. There's a lot of different pieces, and I want to repeat that no two children are alike. So every child is different, but some of the characteristics could be a lot of impulsivity, difficulty sitting still. It could be problems with memory. It could be problems with a slower processing speed, like taking longer to think what the question was and how to answer it. It could also be very behavior related, in the sense of kids who have a very small frustration tolerance window that's very small. And so then, something happens and doesn't go their way or go the way they think it should. And then they can be quite explosive. On the other hand, some kids with FASD can shut down real quickly and go inwards, exploding more on themselves, which can create lower self-esteem and I'm not good enough, and some of those kinds of problems as well in terms of mental health. They can have problems with reading social cues and reading people's faces. Sometimes our kiddos have very black and white thinking, and so they're very literal. So if there's a situation where someone's making a joke, but it's based on understanding a nuanced situation, that's abstract thinking, which also can be a challenge. That could be difficult. They can have trouble with transitions, moving from one activity to another. Or if there's a change in the daily plan, like maybe they're ready for school, they're ready for learning, but there's a substitute teacher and they do math instead of social studies first or something, that can throw them off because they like a set structure and routine, can be really helpful for the kids. They have trouble sometimes with organizing and planning. So they need the steps of a project to be very broken down, very, very broken down. You can't just say to a young child with FASD, go clean your room, because they'll go and sit and then pretty soon they're reading and they're doing something else. And that's typical of lots of children.
All right, perfect. Okay, so you were just giving us some great tips, things to look out for, things to pay attention to. What would you suggest to a parent? When these young people are, in a home setting or community setting, what are some of the things that parents can do, some strategies to help a young person with FASD?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. The first key is safety, and that we need to keep our kids safe. And I think the second piece is knowing when to say, no, this is it, you have to do this. And when it's okay to let something slide, you kind of pick and choose your battles, so to speak, that sometimes it's really important that they brush their teeth, but in the big scheme of things, if they do it right now or not, doesn't really matter. If they're, again, starting to melt down over teeth brushing, for example. But I think lots of us as parents have learned to be super flexible, super patient. We parent our kids differently. And sometimes we get judged because we parent our kids differently because they need something different for their brains. And so what we try and do is respond with calmness, with gentleness, and we want to really focus on building a positive relationship with our kids. Sometimes the word no can be a real trigger for them. And so sometimes we have to really go about things differently and say, well, not right now, but maybe tomorrow we can do that. And so you really have to think outside the box and be really creative. And my son, who's given me permission to give some examples, and this is an example, and he said, be sure to make sure that everybody knows that you're not my birth mom. And we'll look back to that kind of affected me. It kind of was like, oh,
yeah,
because that shouldn't matter, right? But he wanted everybody to know that we adopted him when he was 4. And at about age 6, he started spitting when he was really frustrated. And he actually would spit mostly at me and right in my face. And that's kind of a trigger for some of us. We don't like to be spit at, and we don't like to be spit at in our face. And especially now when we're after COVID with more awareness about germs and bodily fluids. But even back then, we didn't like that. My son is now 25. Anyway, so what we did was, again, a non-reaction from me, which is really hard to do in the moment when somebody's spitting in your face, to say, wow, I can see you're really frustrated right now. Let's go take a bath and see if we can calm our bodies down. And so we went up to the bathtub. And again, I was kind of pulling my hairs out, trying to think of how can I manage this? Obviously, he's frustrated and he needs to spit. So let's practice a safe way. And we happened to have little frogs from Target that were on the bathtub to prevent him from slipping on the ground of the bathtub. And I picked him up and I put him on the wall of the bathtub. And then I got his water bottle and I got my water bottle. And I said, we're going to practice good, clean spits. And so we spit at those frogs. And then afterwards, when he was calmer and the water calmed him down and the spitting, let's get it all out, spit as much as you need to. This is a great place to practice your spits. And so we ended up making up a story about a little frog who needed to practice his good, clean spits in the bathtub, aiming at pretend frogs, not at real frogs. And so we did some therapeutic storytelling around that. And again, it's actually what we did to help him learn that you spit at the frogs. If you need to spit, you don't need to spit at people. And that one worked pretty well for us as a strategy. So it's super creative and it's kind of in the moment, but it's very different than how I was raised. And it's very different how we raise our other children. And it's just, again, his brain is different. Once his amygdala is activated and his frontal cortex is shut down, that's his thinking brain, it's not working, then he's in flight, fight, freeze, or fawn. Those are the four areas. And he's in that fight mode. And I need to do something, and it needs to be something kind of drastic that's going to catch him off guard and like, oh, what's this? And again, that's where that creativity comes in, as being super creative. But again, we worked hard on safety. If he's going to run across the street in front of traffic or be eloping from school and it's 20 below zero, then safety kicks in and I have to do something, to stop him for his own.
Absolutely.
But if it's not, and it's something that can be worked on at home, then I'm going to do that. So to parents and other caregivers, I would say, find your people so that you know that you're not alone. And take care of yourself, and then get really creative in finding unique ways to help your kid learn how to self-regulate. And sometimes, a lot of times, that's starting with co-regulation.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you for saying the co-regulation piece.
Yeah.
I was going to follow up, say, man, that takes a lot of creativity, which means you have to be patient.
Yep.
You have to be very intentional,
Yes.
and that can be difficult when you're a parent, and you're working, and or you may have a school, or you may have other children. So it definitely
Exactly.
takes a lot of energy. A lot of energy is spent on
Exactly.
engaging with young people. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What about in the classroom setting? How would are there any creative things that any
Yeah.
teachers have you done with your son, or things that you've just heard
Yeah.
through your volunteering at Proof Alliance?
Yeah. So for strategies in the classroom, the things that I would recommend is, again, building that relationship and again, we said a lot as parents too, we're here to keep you safe. So I think if teachers can work with parents so that they're using the same kind of language that's being used at home, like we're working to keep you safe, or we did something called tapping to calm our bodies down as well. So it's crossing your arms. This was our main one that we did a lot of. We had some other tapping routines that we did as well, and I wanted his teachers to know that's what we're doing with him. And it's okay to do those practices. It's good trauma-informed care with the whole classroom to learn how to self-regulate and how to handle their emotions when they get too big for them to handle. It's okay to ask for help from the teacher, to say, I need to go to my calming corner or my calming spot. So our son had a little box at school when he was in kindergarten that was his calming box. And he would go and ask for it when he needed it. And then he would sit a little bit away from the group. And he had these different things that he could use that would help him to calm down. As he got older, like second and third grade, he had a piece of the soft side of Velcro that we put underneath his desk so he could rub it. And it was like a fidget that was built in that he could use to calm himself down when he was feeling stressed by rubbing it back and forth. Some strategies specifically for teachers is to eliminate a lot of distractions in the classroom. Sometimes a student who has FASD might need to sit in the front of the room to be able to focus better and have fewer distractions. Sometimes they need to sit in the back and a little bit away from other kids, or sometimes they need to sit next to a good friend that can also help them co-regulate. But those, you don't want to put that on another kid unless they're ready for it and up to it. Jeffrey had a really good friend in second grade that he sat next to that was amazing. And I told his mom, actually, I thought he was going to grow up to be a social worker someday because he was so amazing. Sometimes students need a transitional object from home so they can remember that, they're okay and they're loved, or to use during transition times. So transitions can be really hard. So teachers might want to use a timer or give students a warning or a visual schedule on their desk so they can see when the changes are coming and what's happening next, because there's a lot of anxiety and stress about that. Am I going to be able to handle that? How do I work on that? Places where there's less routine and structure, they need more supervision and more support, not less. So in the hallway, lining up, in the cafeteria, and at recess are really predictable problem areas where they're going to have trouble navigating the social expectations. Not everyone with FASD, but many students or children have sensory integration disorders, so they can have trouble with bright lights. They can have trouble with sounds, smells, like in the cafeteria where it's loud, it's noisy, and there's smells. And so that could be particularly challenging for some students and or some youth with FASD. And so kind of how do you navigate that to make sure that they're getting enough to eat? Sometimes their hunger sensors are off and they don't know when they're hungry or tired. And so sometimes they might need an extra snack that, again, parents can fill up a snack box for them and they could have a little snack on the side at a certain time of day when they might be having more difficulty staying regulated, related, because they're hungry and they don't know it, or they're tired and they don't realize it. So those are two big things to keep in mind as well. So less distractions, timers, step-by-step instructions. So slow it down, break it down, give examples. And again, just good teaching practices that first, you're going to give some instructions, then you're going to model to the kids how to do it. And then you're going to release to the students how to go ahead and do it on their own, but one tiny step at a time. Sometimes teachers need to be flexible. I remember when my son was in high school, he had a particular teacher that had worked really hard with us and with him to build a solid relationship, and he adored her. He took her class every year for 4 years while he was in high school because she was super flexible. And she had one year an assignment, and she laid it all out for them of what was expected. And he went up to her and said, "This isn't going to work for me. I'm not going to be able to do this assignment successfully." And she turned and said, "Okay, well, what kind of similar assignment, so that you can show me that you've learned the information, could you do differently?" And he said, "Let me think about it," because he needed some time to process that she was putting it back on him. So he needed to think about it for a while. But the next day he came back home to me, and she sent me an email as well. So I knew it was coming, to talk it over and come up with an idea. And then the next day he went back and told her, and he worked so hard on that project because it was his, he owned it. And so that's just an ideal situation that isn't going to happen with every teacher and in every situation. But for him, she was a really big key to his success in high school.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And great job on his part to advocate for himself as well. It's already difficult for kids in general to advocate for themselves, but when they realize that, hey, that their capacity is limited to a certain extent to get something done, to be able to speak up about it, that's amazing.
Well, and he had a relationship with her that was based on mutual trust, and she was super friendly with him and patient. And so he felt comfortable going up to her and saying, "This isn't going to work for me."
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you got to definitely have a lot of compassion, a lot of patience. Those things are very important.
Exactly.
Now, there's a lot of stigma still with, FASD. What are some of the strategies or things that you would recommend around dealing with the stigma?
Yeah, so it's so hard because in this society, we're so used to playing the blame game for so many different things that it's, so-and-so's fault that this happened or that happened. And I think what we need to do, and this is easier said than done, it's 1 in 20 kids are impacted by this, and yet it's still not talked about openly. And one of the things I think is because birth moms carry this tremendous guilt and shame that, "Oh, I did this to my kid." And I think in the world around them, they're feeling judged by teachers and workers and others. And again, some kids with FASD end up in the foster care system, end up getting adopted like our son, and some are still with bio moms and doing great, by the way, too. It just all depends on the circumstances. I've talked to so many moms who didn't know they were pregnant. In the US today, in Minnesota today, 50% of all pregnancies are unplanned. 50%. And social drinking among women of childbearing age is on the rise. So, of course, there's going to be a number, if not a large number, of women who are drinking before they even know they're pregnant. Now, whose fault is that? It's not their fault. They didn't know. And so I think we need to just break that cycle of blame and shame and say, this is something that's impacting our kids, and how can we do our very best to help support them to be the best that they can be. And that's, I think, the heart of it. And that I have said a number of times to birth moms that I've worked with, saying, okay, blame and shame is going to do you no good in your life. So forgive yourself, move on, and fight for your kid, because your child needs you in their life, if it's at all possible. Right? They need you to be present, and they need you to be a tiger mom. And that's what I called myself a lot, is I was a tiger mom. Not that I was having my claws out for every teacher. And my son was a student in St. Paul Public Schools, and I was a teacher in St. Paul Public Schools. So sometimes it was a bit of a struggle. My son is super bright and he's super capable, and yet he has a lot of challenges. And so he would get an IEP. We'd get it in place. He'd get the supports. He'd start doing well. And the school system would say, wow, your son is doing so well, we're going to pull his IEP. And then he would start to fail again. And that roller coaster of getting an IEP and losing it happened 3 times during his K-12 experience. And it happened once when he was in early childhood supports. And it's like, so 4 times altogether. And that was not helpful to his self-esteem, to his psyche. Oh, I must be stupid. Oh, I'm dumb. And he's not. He's actually quite brilliant in a number of different ways. And yet, in terms of daily living and in terms of success in school, it was always a struggle to get the supports he needed and keep them in place so he could continue to be as successful as possible. So, yeah, it's really hard. How do we navigate that? And how do we, I would argue that there are a number of kids with FASD that are in a level 3 or 4 program. There's a lot of kids who don't even have an IEP. And so there's a huge range of behaviors and a range of needs. Some kids have trouble with math and money because it's very abstract, and telling time or keeping track of time because it's very abstract. My son doesn't have those issues. He's great with math. He's great with telling time. He's great with keeping track of time. He has like a super skill in that area that's remarkable. So again, it's just kids are so different, and how we set expectations for them that are achievable, that aren't unrealistic, and though we want them to be the best that they can be.
Right. Wow. So if a parent is listening or a caregiver is listening, maybe even a youth worker, educator, what are some resources, some places and spaces that they can go to get some assistance, to learn more, or to support them in their journey with the young person in their life who has FSAD?
FASD. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
You got it. Yes.
FASD. Sorry about that. Yes.
So the best place to go for support is Proof Alliance. And that's the organization that I volunteer for. I'm a volunteer speaker. So I go to schools, or I go to like the MEA teacher meetings. I go to different places where there are teachers to offer an actual PowerPoint on behalf of Proof Alliance to support those schools. I'll go to parent groups. I've been on a panel before, anywhere where it could be helpful. I'm communicating by email right now with a parent who is at a panel that Proof Alliance did, and he's struggling with the IEP process for their daughter, and has some questions and just wants to talk to a parent who's been through it before, and saying, how do I navigate this? This is new to me. I don't know what I'm doing. How can I navigate this successfully for my daughter's sake? And so again, how to just offer support. So Proof Alliance would be my first recommendation. They have a lot of online resources. They have videos. They have this speakers group that's called PACT, PACT, that can send speakers out to your church, anywhere where it's needed, schools, anywhere. And then in addition to that, there are a number of online support groups. They're virtual support groups, and they used to be mostly in person, but because of COVID, most of them have gone to Zoom or in person if you can make it, and we'll also offer it online. So Proof Alliance has a support group for parents. They have support group meetings, but they also have a virtual support group that's a closed group that you can enter through Facebook. So it's as closed, as secure as Facebook is. So, I always add that caveat, but where you can go and meet other parents that are struggling, and that they get it. They understand where you're coming from, what the challenges are, and can offer advice. Sometimes the advice is, you're doing everything right. Way to go. Keep doing it. Or, wow, there's this resource that I just heard about that's in St. Louis Park, and you should really look into that for your son or daughter or whatever. So it could be resources, or it could just be support, saying, someone posted the other day that their daughter washed the dishes 2 times last week. And it was like, yay, we were all clapping because we heard that story, and we knew how much of a struggle that was. And even though that sounds like a very small thing, in that parent's life, that was a really big deal, and it needed celebrating in a big way. And so we were all, chiming in with our congratulations and how proud we were for that moment, and recognizing that, that's time to, bake a cake or something, unexpected, but also celebrate those baby steps because they're huge for our kids.
Absolutely. Wow. Amazing. if there was one message that you could leave for parents, caregivers, and youth workers listening today, what would that message be as we close out?
Wow. It's a hard journey. You're not alone. Take care of yourself, because if you're tired and exhausted and frustrated, you're not going to be able to respond with the patience and the love and the care and the creativity that you need to have. So take care of yourself and reach out and find your people. Find those virtual support groups, or reach out and do some volunteering with Proof Alliance. There's a lot of places out there. There's other FASD virtual support groups through Facebook or other areas that you can find, and find your people so that you know you're not alone. And ending on a hopeful note, that with the right supports and the right people that can offer those supports in addition to you, to your child, they can be successful in school and in life. We just need to provide that right mix for our students.
Absolutely. Amazing. Martha Johnson, volunteer for Proof Alliance, giving us great information on FASD. I'm not going to get it wrong this time.
You got it.
We appreciate your time today on the podcast. Thank you for coming by. We may reach out in the future for a follow-up if more things come in, or if more parents or caregivers have other questions. We would love to have you come back if you're open to it.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good one. We'll see you around. Perfect. So, folks, that was Martha Johnson, volunteer at Proof Alliance. Make sure that you check out Proof Alliance website. Tons of great resources and opportunities for you to learn about FASD and other things that may be useful for you as you go through your journey with the young people in your life. That's going to do it for today's podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Jones. This is It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. There's 3 ways that you can get connected with us to make sure that you're continuing to be influenced and engaged with great information. The first place is on our Facebook page. You can go ahead and go to Facebook, go to search bar, type It Is Not Your Fault podcast, will pop up. Go ahead and like us and follow us so you can find great information like what we heard today, other information and resources that we typically talk about here on the podcast. The second place is on my own personal website. That's jegna.org, JEGNA.org, where you can reach out to me, ask me questions, send me articles, all those good things, and I'll cover those right here on the podcast. And then if you like me, there's a good chance that you'll probably like other folks who do podcasts with us on the podcast network. That network is ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. Again, ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com, where we have a plethora of amazing podcasters right there for you to select and learn good information from. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me today. Be safe, be constructive, be well, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
To check out previous episodes of It's Not Your Fault, or to learn more about Brandon Jones, log on to ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
When I walked across that stage at my high school graduation, I was excited, but confused about my next step. Then I walked through the doors at Doherty Family College. Doherty Family College is part of the University of St. Thomas. It's a 2-year college that lets you earn an associate's degree and puts you on a path to your bachelor's degree. Classes are small, so I have a personal relationship with professors committed to my success. Like the name says, they treat us like family. They call us scholars because they believe we could do anything we put our minds to. They set us up for excellence with free tutoring, and that's not the only thing that's free. Laptops, books, even breakfast and lunch, and bus fare. That's part of the package here at Doherty Family College. It's even free to apply. So do like I did. Go to dfc.stthomas.edu and set up a tour. We'd be excited to welcome you to our family here at Doherty Family College.
To keep my home running smooth, I count on Xfinity Internet. With 99.9% reliability, we're all online at once. No slowdowns. The Xfinity app lets me manage our Wi-Fi and keep things secure. Xfinity makes it easy.